The Mystara project is proud to present Part 7 of the Law of Mystara series. In this episode, we look at the world-changing cataclysm, called the Great Rain of Fire, in BC 3000. Note that modules DA1-4 and then GAS1 initially stated the Great Rain of Fire was 3,000 years before the present day. However, this was changed to 4,000 years ago in GAS2, and all subsequent publications agreed with GAS2. On the first day of the year BC 3000, some Blackmore prototype nuclear engines explode, shifting the planet's axis 45 degrees anti-clockwise. Nuclear clouds darken the sky. Fire rain falls from the clouds, causing mass destruction and contamination that slowly withers creatures. Blackmore shifts 10 degrees to the north, becoming the North Pole, its civilization destroyed. The lands of the Thonian Empire are torn apart by earthquakes and submerged under the sea. Raphael, a Blackmore nuclear physicist, was undertaking a thought transference experiment that replicated magical telepathy when he was killed by the Great Rain of Fire. However, his mind was caught in the energy matrix of the experiment, and somehow survived, sustained by the great energies that the cataclysm unleashed. His mind with telepathic power drifted, devoid of sensations. Thonian colonies around the globe appear to have suffered some sort of contagion cataclysm, possibly caused by a common system similar to the Internet. A colony in what is now the Broken Lands is destroyed, with one notable device intact. A colony near the Forest of Kar in northeastern Devania has its technology destroyed. The survivors revert to a hunter-gatherer lifestyle and return to following the Nether immortal Vuden. They are the ancestors of the Thracians. Colonies in southern Devania and central Scotha are also destroyed. Thonian survivors sail east to escape the fiery rain and the suffocating poisonous dust clouds. They bypass the newly formed frozen continent of Proto-Alphatia to reach the Scotha coast. They call this new land Thonia. Survivors of an elven colony near Blackmore, including the Porador, Felister, Celebril and Gelbalf clans, fled south to avoid the rotting, corrupting energies of the cataclysm. They eventually found shelter in deep caverns beneath what would later be the Broken Lands. Janalith, Jeffranel and Lothana elves survived the Great Rain of Fire, but reverted to savagery as their forests enter an ice age. The Great Rain of Fire caused widespread panic in the Oltec and Azcan empires, who saw this as the end of the fifth sun. Survival instincts took over, which broke down imperial controls. The change in climate started to impact vegetation, so that the jungles and forests began to give way to plains. Large numbers of Oltecs and Azcans were transported to the Hollow World by the Immortals. The small numbers remaining continued their war. Some Oltecs sailed for what they hoped would be safer lands, braving the Sea of Dread. They colonized the eastern jungle coast, Oceania, and western Scotha. Most of the Scotha colonists farmed the coast, whilst the remainder herded aurochs on the steppes. They call their land Gen, meaning green. Oltecs of the savage coast began to call themselves Los Guardianos. The Great Rain of Fire drew spirits to Mystara. The spirits connected with the Ethengarians who roamed the northern wildlands. The Ethengarians were possibly descended from the Peshwa, especially noting their respective Bortak and Bortai tribes. The Ethengarians began wandering south in search of warmer lands. The old dwarfs inhabiting the mountains of eastern Brune succumbed to the rotting disease caused by the radiation. Their civilization began to decline. Their underground city of Darmuk in the Makres Mountains was ruined by the Great Rain of Fire. Some fairies decided to promote chaos to prevent humans from setting off another cataclysm. They took the red dragon as their symbol and infiltrated human and demi-human settlements. They promoted the use of fire in measured proportions to combat the ice age that the Great Rain of Fire had brought on. According to the Shao sage Turk Su, they are the first drakes. However, the first drakes were created by Terra in prehistoric times when she transformed some of the Eldar. The elven civilization on the southern continent of Evergreen is obliterated. Evergreen became the South Pole. Elven survivors fled to the elven colony of Grunland in southern Devania. As a result of the Great Rain of Fire, the Grunland region began centuries of volcanic activity and became known as Vulcania. The elves survived in the harsh climate by relying on technology, such as heaters. In southeastern Scotha, A great series of volcanic eruptions transformed the Tangor Peninsula from plains to a mountainous, volcanic, infertile region. To survive, the Tanagoro reverted to a hunter-gatherer lifestyle on the coasts and in the jungles of their new surroundings. Some migrated to the forests of the southeastern Minian coast. The Immortals transported some of the Tanagoro to the Hollow World. Ice sheets began to recede from the southeast Brune coast. The immortal Ka the Preserver and his immortal allies began limiting the effects of the Great Rain of Fire. The North and South Poles were opened to connect directly with the Hollow World, destroying Blackmoor and Evergreen. A group of fairies became trapped in deep caverns following the Great Rain of Fire. They founded the Kingdom of Annwn. Beast men in northwestern Brune referred to the Great Rain of Fire as the time of interesting weather, and they rejoiced at the destruction of the Blackmoor humans. The beast men noted that bears and deer no longer roamed the northwestern steppes of Brune, following the Great Rain of Fire. The Ice Age brought on by the Great Rain of Fire destroyed the lizard men civilization in swampland of what was to become Nithia. Rising sea levels from melting ice started submerging the southeastern Brune coast, which commenced the formation of the Sunlit Sea. Manwara created an enormous bubble from his breath to shield his favored sea creatures, including the Aquarendi and the Sharkkin, from the aquatic effects of the Great Rain of Fire. Once safe, the sea peoples were released, but the sea was now cold. They split up following the warmer currents. Water levels rose. The Karimari of Olimwengu were unaffected by the Great Rain of Fire. The relatively intelligent Malfegi lizardmen continued to inhabit the Malfegi swamps of southeastern Brune. The Tortle farmers and hunters of the central Savage Coast benefited from the rotation of the planet's axis, which took their lands from near the Arctic Circle to a subtropical latitude. The small villages of ill-tempered Soktari man-scorpions on the Savage Coast benefited from the planet's rotation in a similar manner. Walloran civilization was thriving in the northern Orcs Head Peninsula. The Great Rain of Fire shifted their lands from the Arctic Circle to a subtropical latitude. Aranir thrived in their forested web cities of the western Savage Coast. The Great Rain of Fire shifted their land from the cusp of the Arctic Circle to a subtropical latitude. The hinlands of the upper Kenaran River Valley in central Devania are rotated slightly further south, from the fringe of the southern tropic to south of the 30th parallel. Dragons were scattered throughout the world. The Great Rain of Fire increased their distrust of humans. The forest of Ka in northeast Devania was destroyed, becoming what is now the Green Coast. The Frosthaven Sea that separated Brune and Scotha became the White Sea. The Oceania Sea became the Western Sea of Dawn. The Dawn territories separated from Brune and Proto-Alphatia to form the Isle of Dawn. The Esterhold shallows deepened to become the Sea of Esterhold. The Belisarian Peninsula separated from Scotha and rotated north from a tropical to a subtropical latitude. The Minian Gulf becomes the Strait of Minia. The plains of Izonda located around the northern tropic rotated to the southern tropic and started to turn into the desert of Izonda. The jungles of Pelotan were wiped out, as the land was rotated from the equator to a southern temperate latitude. The subtropical Sestian Peninsula became separated from Devania. The resultant island became mostly tropical. The temperate Sea of Fog became the tropical Sea of Steam. Blackmoor's comeback-in survived the Great Rain of Fire due to its powerful magical duomas, but it was submerged underwater from the rising sea. This concludes our look at the world-changing Great Rain of Fire cataclysm of 3000 BC.